Hey everyone, brand new episode of the David Seaman Hour. This is our End of the World special. It is the eve of the make-believe Mayan End of the World, December 21st. And we're here tonight with Randall McMurphy, who is Duck Cuckoo's Nest on Twitter. This is now, I think this is like your fourth time on the show, right?
It's been a couple, yeah.
Yeah, it's something like that, third or fourth. And all-around interesting dude. We're going to be talking about a couple of interesting books that neither of us have finished reading yet. And so you're going to get some intellectual stuff tonight. You're also going to get some end of the world stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about the latest news on the NDAA, which hit the homepage of Reddit earlier today. We're going to talk about all that stuff. Some crucial developments in that area. The congressional campaign, that's taken a turn for the better, actually. It's kind of turned a corner, and some really interesting, exciting things have happened since the podcast with Matt Staggs, where I was super depressed about the campaign's prospects. A lot of things have changed since then, and I'll share some of that stuff. But how are you tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I actually just walked in and saw your message, and I'm glad to join you again. You know, we got started a little early, but that's right on track. I saw you had a show lined up for later tonight. Who's that?
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to get this one recorded and up as soon as possible because tonight at 11 I'm going to be on Adam Kokesh's show, and he's one of the most popular libertarian talk show hosts, I would say, in the country, definitely, if not, the whole, English-speaking internet world.
Gotcha.
So that's really exciting. We're going to talk about the campaign on his show. And he's been on this podcast before. He seems like a really, really intriguing guy, and definitely leans heavily in the direction of not trusting big government or big bureaucracy, which I think that's the right way to be.
Yeah, I was unable to catch that earlier episode, so I'm going to have to tune into this one because I've never heard of this guy, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think he's been on. I think he's on Rogan before, and he's his own thing. He used to have a show on RT America. He had his own show called Adam versus the Man, I think it was called. And then I don't know exactly.
Hold on. Was that the guy who got arrested for dancing in the Jefferson Memorial?
Was that him?
I think so. Now that's ringing a bell. Like, I believe when you said was it Adam versus the Man? Because I remember seeing that on the fucking YouTube video.
Yeah, Adam versus the Man. And I don't really know his exact career track, but I know he had that TV show on RT, and now he has just such a big online following that he kind of does like what Alex Jones does and just puts out his own content, and people subscribe to it and watch it on YouTube.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think that might be the same guy. I'm going to have to look it up.
Yeah, go ahead and look him up and let me know what you think. But let's talk about the fact that the world is supposedly going to end in 3 hours. I don't think it actually is. I don't think anything's going to happen. I think the Mayans were covering their asses by picking a date that was so far in the future that nobody could say they're incorrect, right? So if you're some Mayan shaman priest, you go, oh, let's just pick the year 2012 because that is so far in the future. Nobody's going to call us out on it. It would be like me saying on a podcast that I think that the internet is not going to function by the year 2200. It's like I'll be long fucking dead by then. Who cares if I'm wrong?
Right. It won't even matter at all. That's I don't know. I've always subscribe to the idea that if they couldn't predict their own extinction, then what good are they?
Right. Well, I don't want to shit all over this culture that clearly had a lot of cool stuff going for it, but their calendar is designed as a circle, and yet they didn't have the wheel. They did not have carts that moved by wheel, which really I think probably hampered their trade and their ability to build cool pyramid-type stuff. And as a result, they had to sacrifice people on pyramids that were much smaller than they could have been.
Right. Yeah, I don't even think they had metal weapons, if I'm correct. I think they had these laminated tooth sword wood things, what are they called, atlatls or something? No, that's the throwing weapon. They had some kind of sword thing. They didn't have, they were pretty low tech, man.
Yeah, this actually segs perfectly into that book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. And it's funny, I'm such a fuck up here because I told people this would be the first. I'm calling it a book club. This would be the first. I'm kind of calling it that tongue in cheek, like the Oprah Book Club. This was the first pick, was Guns, Germs, and Steel, and I haven't even finished the thing. It's so dense. I feel like I already get the point of like where he's going with it,
Right.
and it's definitely an interesting book. But what do you make of it so far?
Same thing. It's I was exploring that and the Sex at Dawn book that you mentioned, and like you said, it goes where it goes. A lot of these books, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of now that they're some of them. It's like half they're regurgitating old stuff, and the other ones they're just trying to come up with new ideas to sell their book. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like they're
yeah.
just
Well, I
trying
mean,
to.
Guns, Germs, and Steel is it's well written. It won a Pulitzer. So I think when it came out in 1997 or 1999, it was considered really groundbreaking stuff because he kind of disproved a bunch of earlier theories about why, the European white man basically took over much of the world, and he disproved, some of the more racist theories out there, and also just weird theories that, and I mean, he does a good job of disproving them. And basically, it comes down to environment. Like they happen to be in the right place, and because of that, they got an advantage. And then once you get to the point where you have guns, you have dangerous germs because you're living in these high population density cities where you only survive if you've adapted to these different diseases. Uh, Guns, germs, and then steel weapons and steel tools. When you take that to a more quote unquote primitive society, it's easy to conquer them. And I might not be getting this 100% correct, but that's the basic gist of the book from what I've
Right.
read so far.
No, it is. It starts. It's who is he? He's talking like a politician or something at the beginning, right? I can't remember. He was like narrating the book too. He was talking to somebody, but I was.
Yeah, yeah.
I
That part annoyed me too because it was like he doesn't want to talk down or he doesn't want to like condescend more quote unquote primitive cultures. But the whole premise of the book is that these more primitive cultures were wiped out, were conquered by more advanced civilizations, and these people. I don't think it's a bad thing if you're whatever he is, an anthropologist or whatever. I don't think it's a bad thing to use the word primitive because they are technologically primitive. Like, I mean, he's not saying that they're spiritually inferior or intellectually inferior, but if you look at what the Europeans had in the 1500s versus what some indigenous populations had here in the New World, clearly the Europeans had more dangerous shit. And especially a book like his, the fact that he uses the first part to kind of hedge his bets and get all politically correct, I felt that was a waste of time.
Right. That's kind of what I was. It was yeah, like you said, exactly. Trying to be politically correct, trying to kind of fence right instead of just throwing it out there. I mean, we have a brutal history. The whole world does, and I mean, it just is what it is. We're always going to dominate other. I mean, any culture. Who was it? Hernan Cortez. He conquered a bunch of people. I mean, and all of it is due to technology, and like you said, guns, germs, and steel. You got to kind of acclimate to your environment. Whenever you introduce a new germ, you're going to kill off people. It's just like going down to Mexico and drinking the water. You can't drink the water, but indigenous people can. They get used to whatever bacteria and stuff are in the water supply. It doesn't really harm them the same way. But you can go down there and go to a hotel and order a drink, and just the ice cubes can be made with local water, and you can get real bad like parasites and stomach bugs and stuff. So
Oh, totally, totally. When I was in Montevideo earlier this year, I was careful to get bottled water and just bottled water and beer the whole time I was down there, but I still got sick because I think it's inevitable. Like they wash the salads with their tap water and stuff, so it's very easy to catch. Even if you're drinking bottled water, it's easy to catch stuff. And I was like running for the toilet for a few days until I got over it. And yeah, these microbiological differences between cultures, when they clash, it causes a pretty severe loss of life in some cases.
Right.
Obviously not in the case of like just being sick for a week, but I mean, if you're the first Europeans to hit the New World and they have no acclimation to some of these diseases, you're just going to wipe them out. And the other really cool thing about that book that I thought was interesting is early on he disproves the theory that less advanced societies are that way because they're less intelligent.
Right.
And what he says is, if you're living in like some tribal culture where you're not gonna succeed, and you're gonna be killed off by like a predator, like an alligator or something, or other tribesmen are gonna kill you, or whatever the hell happens to you. Like if you're living in that state, you have to be intelligent in order to pass on your genes, or you're just gonna die and you're not gonna contribute to the gene pool. And versus modern European civilization, where pretty much everybody survives and passes on their genes. As long as you're strong enough to not get wiped out by smallpox or something like that, then you are going to reach adulthood and reproduce with somebody and pass on your genetic lineage. And as a result, he, I think, hypothesizes that the people in these tribal cultures are actually probably more intelligent, if anything, than the average, Western man. So that was really fascinating to me, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I really don't think intelligence factors either way on culture or upbringing or anything. I mean, if your brain's evolved the same way, then you're going to think the same. You're going to be just, like I said, you might be more, you might be less, but you're probably going to be equally intelligent. And they couldn't have been idiots. They figured out a lot. But to get back to the other point really quick about the germs and stuff, the European cultures and civilizations were notoriously fucking filthy, man. They wouldn't bathe. They wouldn't do anything. So, I mean, it comes to reason that they built up a pretty strong immunity to a bunch of shit just from, living like filthy bastards. They didn't die from it. They'd go, months and months without bathing. They'd wear layers and layers of clothing. And they'd have, bugs and mites and all kinds of horrible things going on with them. And they thought you'd get sick from bathing, like from using public bathhouses and stuff like that. And no doubt you probably can, but
yeah.
Nowadays we know that, germs, just imagine childbirth and stuff back then when they didn't consider washing their hands.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have been good.
Well, there's that. They didn't really understand germs, and it's just a disgusting time period. Everything was covered in mud. You went to go see a play, and you were one of the groundlings just sitting in the mud. And also, I think it was on Duncan Trussell's podcast, he talked at length about how, a woman in the 14th century or 15th century would just have, body lice and all the wrong areas, and just really kind of challenges the notion that it was a romantic, fun time to be alive,
Yeah, it wasn't. It's kind of hard to put the sexy on when you got a bunch of funk jumping off in the room, Covering stuff with powders and perfumes and stuff doesn't mask the odor. It just doesn't. It doesn't help. But,
yeah.
Really quick question: have you seen the show at all? What is the name of it? Jeremy Irons is in it. He plays the Pope. It's a Showtime show.
I know what you're talking about. I have not seen that show before.
Oh, the Borgias.
Yeah, it's been recommended to me.
Man, you got to check that out. That is a vicious fucking show. And it's supposedly, at least partially based on this dude who fucking knows. But that goes back to, the guns, germs, and steel thing. It shows when France came in and conquered and started laying waste to people because they had heavy cannons. And they were just, there was nothing. People couldn't do anything to stand up to them. They just went where they wanted to go because they had the cannons to do it. It's like being the only person with tanks. And they were laying waste, just demolishing people. So, I mean, that's just worldwide, wherever you go. Whoever has the biggest guns or the newest shit is usually going to take over, take what they want, invade, stuff like that. Which I think Joe Rogan's talked about. When the aliens come, they're going to do the same thing to us that we do to all the other dumber animals and the people with not as good of weapons, we colonize them.
Yeah. I'm glad that Joe Rogan talks about all that stuff because I think he's burnt out on people like me tweeting him links to different, civil liberties, NDAA stuff. I think if you want to have a podcast that's one of the most popular on the internet, which I think he just won an award from iTunes the other day.
Yeah, I think he got like #1 in the world for 2012 or some shit, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. And if you want to keep that up, which definitely, I mean, he deserves it. You got to cover more than just like Glenn Greenwald type stuff. You got to also cover shit that's super interesting. And
but that's what makes it so good. It's his subject matter is so diverse, and he's well spoken enough on every subject, even though he considers himself like half a retard. You know, he's he's open enough to every subject that he can discuss it. You know, with someone if he respects their opinion.
Oh, totally.
And, I mean, that's from contrails and aliens to, like I said, the NDAA with you.
It's clear that he's a really smart guy, and he keeps an open mind, which is so rare when you get somebody who hits that level of that size of an audience. A lot of the people who are hosts of shows like that are just dicks, and they're not open to the possibilities of kind of fringe topics. So
Right.
It's really cool to have somebody who's not like that out there producing content. But how do we get on the topic of aliens? This happens every fucking podcast. I don't know how it happens.
I was talking about how France invaded with cannon.
Oh, right.
And how the
Yeah.
aliens are going to do that shit to us with their space cannons.
Yeah, I was talking to Reed Gower on the last podcast. He created the Sagan series, which is this amazing YouTube short series. It's already been viewed millions of times. It's just super inspirational. I would encourage everybody to watch it. And we talked about Stephen Hawking's views on aliens, which Stephen Hawking is not optimistic that things would go well for us if we were to encounter another civilization.
Right.
But, I mean, I disagree with Stephen Hawking. I think it would be pretty cool. There would probably be an exchange of information. I mean, assuming they didn't wipe us out accidentally in the same way that we wiped out a lot of the native New World populations with our germs. Assuming that didn't happen, and hopefully they would be smart enough to not do that, there would be such an exchange of information, and we would get all kinds of good technology out of it, even if it meant, enslaving ourselves to them in exchange. We would definitely have some awesome technology.
Right. I don't know. I just think it's kind of interesting that whenever people broach the subject of aliens, they automatically assume they're going to be humanoid. And then we're going to be able to communicate. They might be space lobsters, man. We don't fucking know. They might be pods. They might be bugs. They might be like, what's that movie? Not Universal Soldier. That one with Johnny Rico and shit. It's
oh, yeah, Starship Troopers.
Spaceship Troopers.
Starship Troopers. Yeah.
Starship Troopers.
I like that movie District 9 a lot because the aliens in that, I mean, they called them prawns, and they look kind of like big shrimp. And who's to say that, alien life might look like a crustacean to us, or like a giant squid or something. Who knows what it'll look like? We don't really know. Certainly, it's unlikely that it'll look exactly like humans, except for bigger eyeballs and a small mouth.
But whatever it is, it's going to have to be something that's either mastered long distance space travel or master some type of like teleportation or time travel, because we haven't done that. So whatever it is, they're going to have to come from somewhere that we're not aware of.
Yeah. Well, NASA just recently came out with some paper on the feasibility of a warp drive. This is like real stuff. This isn't, some bullshit on Reddit.
Right.
They're actually working on the logistics of a warp drive. And at first, the guy who was doing the calculations on it, the NASA scientist, he did the calculations and found out that it's possible, but the amount of energy required is so vast that it's basically not practical anytime in the next 1,000 years. And then he started doing different calculations. I forget exactly what he did, but if you know those Dyson vacuums that are like super efficiently designed.
Yeah, man.
Because they just like kind of took some of the assumptions of a vacuum cleaner and like modernized it. Well, he did the same thing with his calculations. He's like, what if we tilted the angle of this thing this way and had the drive operating like this? And when he did that new calculation, the amount of energy required came down to the point where like we could actually do it, hypothetically. And that got a lot of people excited, because then it's like, wow, we could do this within the next couple of generations. We could have something that could be at another star, within a matter of, I don't know, days or weeks, which would be pretty crazy if that were possible.
Yeah, whenever like a new idea is broached like that, you never know when something becomes like theoretically possible. Then it opens up a ton of new doors, and that's something to work with. I haven't seen anything on it, but I mean, it'd be fascinating to look into. I just heard today that MIT came up with some kind of new matter or something that reacts differently with magnetic fields, and that's the first thing I thought. I was like, okay, they're going to find a way to magnetic propulsion, as far as space travel instead of fossil. I mean, we still basically use fucking fossil fuels for everything. I'm sure the space shuttle
everything from the stuff that we make,
fuel, but
from plastics, and I mean, everything is based on petroleum. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. We're low tech. I mean, when you think about all the advancements we have, basically, and then go back to we still use fossil fuels for cars and, carbon for this and that, and we use regular ass toilet paper. I'm still waiting for the seashell things like Demolition Man.
Oh, speaking of toilet paper, I was at CVS earlier tonight, and down here in Fort Lauderdale, South Florida, the CVS next to me is the seediest CVS ever.
Nice.
There's always like puke on the floor, and like it's just a crazy place. I don't understand how it can be this unprofessional. But the guy behind me in line, he blatantly cuts in front of me, and he's a pretty like big. Older, creepy-looking dude. He looks kind of like the killer in 8mm. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Okay.
So I was thinking, am I going to call this guy out for butting in front of me as I check out with my toilet paper, or am I just going to let this one slide? And I decided to let it slide because it's a 30-second difference. There's no real benefit to me. Either way, my manhood is intact. I just want to get the fuck out of here. And then he turns around and he like starts touching my toilet paper and like putting his finger on it and like tapping his finger on it. He's like, I don't recommend this. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, it's like wax paper. And I think he meant sandpaper because wax paper doesn't seem all that bad if that's what you're putting on your ass.
Right.
But because I picked
sandpaper, that's for sure.
I had a thing of generic toilet paper, and I guess he thought he was helping me by butting in front of the line and then telling me not to get generic toilet paper. But it was such a weird exchange. I was like, what the fuck just happened? And then I ended up getting in front of him in line anyways. I repositioned myself and was able to not lose face, even though it was such a weird. It was like a not funny version of like a Larry David skit. It was just
I'm trying to picture you jockeying for position in line in the seedy CVS with your generic toilet paper. That sounds like good times, man. Yeah. That sounds like some end of the world type shit.
Well, down here in South Florida, it always kind of feels like the end of the world. And I tweeted that, and then somebody's like, oh, yeah, it's the same. Your little spot in Florida is the same as West Africa or, like, wherever. And I was like, no, obviously it's not the same fucking thing as, like, some of the worst places in the world. I'm just saying, like, compared to other parts of the United States, it has kind of a feeling here like things are not entirely stable. That's all I'm saying,
Yeah.
And plus, like...
Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, like, after midnight here, you'll see 10 or 11 cop cars just rip out of nowhere and head down the highway at full speed, going to some call. And you start to feel like you're in that Jake Gyllenhaal movie about the LAPD, like, there's some crazy shit that goes down in South Florida. And when I said it's like the end of the world down here, that's what I mean. Like, there is some serious, not only serious crime, but just some seriously crazy fucking people down here in Florida.
Yeah, I hear you, dude. Some parts of Florida are super skeevy. I mean, they're pretty low rent. And obviously your guys' pill industry is pretty hopping down there. What's the deal with that, by the way? Why is that not regulated down there?
What are you talking about?
Have you seen the documentary, The OxyContin Express?
No, I have not. Oh, you're talking about just pharmaceutical pills down here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They don't have a database down there for pharmaceutical pills, so everybody goes down there, all these hillbillies and all these fucking pill dealers, because they can go down there and buy it in bulk. They can buy as much as they want, basically. It's not regulated.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
Florida also just has kind of a... This is clearly a political message here. It's kind of third world in the sense that you have all these like old douchebags in there, like Maseratis and Rolls Royces and stuff. And then like 2 blocks away, you have these motels that are like Bukowski motels. You know, it's just people
rent
like
by the hour type of place.
yeah, like rent by the hour place. People just like drinking a 6-pack and like in a wife beater, and they're just right on top of each other. There's no distance at all between like total poverty and like just silly wealth. You know.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's places like that in California too. There's places like that everywhere, man. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's it's kind of strange when you can basically go a block up the road and you're in a whole different, economic bracket.
Yeah, you go from like 5-star restaurant with nice cars parked outside to the Bukowski motels, rent by the hour. Like the mattress probably has not been replaced or cleaned in 30 years. Just always got like a certain moistness to it.
That's rough, brother.
Speaking of which, let's talk about Sex at Dawn.
Sex at Dawn. Oh yeah, Sex at Dawn. Go for it. Lead it off.
Well, can you summarize Chris Ryan's like his main argument or arguments?
What I took for the most part from Sex at Dawn is that these people's idea is, or Chris, whoever, I don't really know the author's name, but the idea behind it is that earlier humans weren't necessarily monogamous. They were more of a tribal culture. They defended the whole tribe together. They hunted together. The whole tribe raised all the children, kind of like a wolf pack. And they shared mates. That's kind of what he's saying. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I know there's a lot of study and a lot of different trains of thought on it. And it might have happened, but I don't really know. What's your take on it? Do you think that's how it went down?
I think that probably went down in like a lot of tribes or a lot of packs of people. I think they probably had a more communal thing where everybody was just having sex with everybody, and there wasn't a whole lot of possessiveness going on. But I'm sure there were also some fiefdoms and kingdoms where one guy decided he was gonna exclusively have sex with the most attractive woman in the tribe, and then you had kind of then you have hierarchy. It's hard to
envision a scenario where someone doesn't try to be the alpha. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. I think, but the stuff that I found more fascinating about Sex at Dawn was not so much that as the sperm war type of stuff.
Yeah, Rogan's covered that as well, and I've done some reading into that. And there's different trains of thought on that. From there's sperm that kill each other, there's hunter killer sperm, to the shape of the penis is shaped like a plunger to pull the other dude's sperm out and give your sperm a better chance at fertilizing and therefore perpetuating your race or your bloodline. I don't know how much there is to that. Same thing with the vocalizations, like the female vocalizations. Were you reading about that? Like the vocalization during sex, they're saying that it's part to stimulate the partner, but it's also in part to attract other sexual partners by arousing them with her sounds. No, I've had chicks that did that. I've definitely had chicks where you got a roommate or something, and you're banging the broad, and she's being extraordinarily loud for some reason. I'm like, who are you putting on a show for, right? So cave bitches might have did that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's actually really interesting. And the penis plunger thing, I thought that was cool because he talks about how I think gorillas. He says they have really small penises because just one alpha gorilla assumes control of the whole sexual market, right? And he's the one who has sex with everybody, and then the kind of beta gorillas don't get to have sex, and as a result, there's no I'm not even using the right terms here, but there's no.
No,
real,
you are. You're
there's no real
articulating your point pretty correctly.
Okay, cool. There's no real competitive force for your dick to be big if you're a gorilla, because once you assert yourself as the alpha and you have access to all those females, it doesn't matter if it's it doesn't matter the size. It's you're the only one getting access to sex, versus the way early human society developed, according to Chris Ryan, is that everybody's having sex with everyone. So if you want your genetic material to be the one that ends up impregnating the woman and carrying on your line, you need to have that plunger penis that's bigger and rips the other guy's sperm out.
Right.
And that's where it starts to get a little bit. That's where it starts to get a little bit crazy.
Anything. I'm not going for or against that, but I mean, at the other end of that spectrum is back then nobody was circumcised, so your plunger ain't gonna be plunging much because you're smooth, right?
Right.
So people don't really factor that in. You think these cavemen are like pulling the forward? I mean, I'm not circumcised, so I'm pretty. You know, that was the first thing I thought of. I'm like, that really wouldn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. But I mean, it could work like that. I don't know. I mean, it might be. Some people might develop super mushroom head tips to, you know, suction other dudes' sperms out. I mean, going back to wolf packs.
Yeah,
Definitely stuff like that happens. Like, I used to do a lot of studying on wolves. I was really fascinated by them. And one of the things I learned was that the alpha, omega, you know, females in the pack, the other wolves, the subservient females, their ovulation cycles, in some cases, their whole ovulation cycles will stop, man, and shut down, so they can't reproduce at all. I don't know if it's a psychological thing. I never, you know, this was pre-internet. This was from reading books. I really should look into it more before I sound like an idiot talking about it. But, yeah, I read definitely that happens where, you know, the males, they don't have nothing to do because they've been physically dominated by the alpha male and they don't have a shot at mating. And the females, they don't even try to reproduce. The only, you know, the alpha male and alpha female couple mate, and the rest of the wolf pack basically raises the cubs, right? But the thing is, they're still so devoted to the cubs that there's cases of, you know, bear attacks, all kinds of stuff, where wolf pack, they will fight to the very last wolf. They'll fight to the death. Every last one of them will, to protect the cubs, you know.
Wow.
Which goes back to the sex at dawn thing, where, you know, cavemen are protecting. It's kind of a tribal thing. I mean, there's a lot of ties in, and it's all just, I guess, basically nature. You know, we're still basically animals at our core, so.
Yeah. Well, these are the kinds of conversations that I've been having lately, where I go to a bar or something and meet some cool people, and I might make some casual comment about, you know, like, I'll say to some girl, like, you look like the alpha of your group, and then, you know, before you know it, we're talking about plunger penises and wolf packs, and then so inevitably, like, some member of their group shows up late, you know, or like comes into the conversation like 30 minutes deep, and they're just like, what the fuck is this guy talking about, you know? Because it's something that, like, you have to really, like, you have to be there for the whole conversation. You can't just, like, you can't jump straight into sperm wars. It has to start off by just acknowledging that a lot of the shit that started in caves is still with us. Pulses. And hey everyone, we are back. What happened is the computer stopped recording for some reason, so we just decided to break this up into a two-part interview. But we're both still here, and we were talking a bit off the air, and we started talking about Duncan Trussell's latest podcast, where he talked about the fact that he has testicular cancer. And I think he just, based on his Twitter account, he just recently came out of surgery for that. Did you listen to that episode?
I did, man. I actually listened to half of it, and then I turned it off. You know, I have family, and I've had a lot of friends and a couple other people dealing with cancer situations right now, and I just I didn't really want to put myself in that state of mind, so I gave myself a break from it, but I'm going to continue it someday.
Yeah, I thought it was, even though it was only like 37 minutes long, I think it was one of the most powerful, intense podcasts he has put out there.
Right. That and the one with him and his mom was pretty good. But anyways, go ahead.
I haven't listened to that one yet, but it was just really kind of boiled down to the essence of, I think, what he is all about as a person and as a personality. In terms of, you really got to go for it. You know, you've got to, you know, like that Drake song, "Doing Me" or whatever. You got to do your thing and sort of fight the fight. This is it. You know, this is your life, and something like that can hit you at any moment. And, you know, it could hit you 10 years from now. It could hit you tomorrow. This is the End of the World podcast episode, so it's worth talking about shit like that for at least a couple minutes, you know?
For sure. Yeah, no, like I just, you know, I really do. I have some friends. I mean, cancer's a fucked up thing, man. That's one of the other reasons I'm so pro legalization of weed, and just for them to have the chance to study the effects, because I've read some studies and seen some videos about how cancer is inhibited by certain, you know, THC in certain forms, edibles, all kinds of stuff where they really don't know how it works. I read a story about a guy and his son had cancer, and they were doing chemo and all this stuff, and none of it was working. and it was killing his kids. So he took him off of everything, and he just started giving him edible marijuana, I believe in like a tincture form, and it sent the cancer into remission, and I mean all kinds of crazy stuff. So I really believe that should be explored further. If there's any chance of that, curing this atrocious, fucking ridiculous disease, then they gotta explore it, right?
Yeah, and just the fact that it reduces people's pain and suffering and makes them happier when they're going through something like that, that cannot be marginalized either.
Yeah, I mean, the federal government's so ridiculous. I mean, I'm currently on parole still. I have to take piss tests every week and stuff like that. But because, like, I've been shot and whatever, and I have a rod in my leg, I get prescriptions of pain pills. I don't take them because I don't like taking pharmaceuticals. But I can get a prescription for Percodan and Percocet and morphine sulfates. But I can't smoke weed. So they'd rather have me take narcotics, which, are prescribed to me, than a plant which legally grows, which will have the same effect. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, there was a case just recently that made the rounds online. A couple of women were pulled over in Dallas by police down there, and they threw a cigarette out the window, and I guess one of the cops thought that maybe they were throwing drugs out the window, and then, they weren't sure if they smelled marijuana in the car, and they asked the two women, have you been smoking marijuana? And they said, no, we haven't been. That was a cigarette we threw out the window. And they pulled them out of the car and administered a vaginal and anal cavity search on these two women in broad daylight, like just totally fucking insane. And now there's a lawsuit over it, and I hope they sue the shit out of those two cops because it's just ridiculous.
Were they at least female officers?
Well, I think they called over female officers to do it, but it's still, it's being done as people are driving by. And
I mean, it's completely ridiculous, but I just want to know if it was that fucking ridiculous.
Right. I mean, they did bring in, same-gender officers to administer it, but that's ridiculous. At what point are they just ignoring the Bill of Rights altogether and just treating you like a piece of property? And actually, Quentin Tarantino, he has a new movie coming out, Django Unchained, about I guess it takes place like right before the Civil War. And in an interview or something, he said something that's been kind of controversial. He said that the drug war is the new slavery because now you have, a mostly minority population that is just locked up in prisons, and there are all kinds of weird exchanges where you have, for-profit prisons trading prisoners with non-profit, with, state prisons, and it's just fucking, you're just trading bodies. It's pretty insane stuff.
Yeah, you do. They absolutely do. They have to shuffle people around. Like when I was in the feds, they'd open up a new prison and they'd pull like 100 dudes from here, 100 dudes from there to fill this new one. And then, they offer the cops bonuses to move and whatever, and they pay them for relocation and stuff. But it's all business, man. Like Taft prison is a federal prison, and it's owned by Wackenhut. And Wackenhut is a publicly traded stock, and it's a for-profit prison, man. The feds use it, state use it, everybody uses it. And like you said, prisoners are big business. It's the same thing, and a lot of it ties into the drug war. Like in the feds, they have certain programs where you could do like boot camp and stuff like this. You can get like a certain amount of halfway house. A lot of the programs are only offered to people who are convicted of drug crimes. Violent crimes aren't eligible. Even though violent crimes, like violent federal crimes, are the least amount with repeat offenders, if that makes sense. The highest amount of repeat offenders is the drug dealers, and they offer them the most programs and benefits, let them out of prison early because they basically know they're going to come right back. And they do, because when you get out of federal prison, there's very few, job prospects, stuff like that, very few programs in place to help you. And what do? You got to pay your bills, you go back to selling drugs, you go back to prison. My sentence was so long that I've seen people come back numerous times. I've seen people come back 3-4 times on violations and stuff. They're like, oh, you're back too? Nah, man, I'm still doing the same bid, You're just an asshole. And you want to trade places with them, but you also realize that they're just stuck in this loop, And the thing is, it is a loop. The federal parole system works very strangely compared to anything else. Like if you have 5 years supervised release, that's what they call parole now, supervised release. So if you have 60 months supervised release and 4 years into it, you get in trouble and you catch a violation, you go back to prison, when you get out, your supervised release term starts over. That whole 5 years starts over at day one. That's why prisoners call it life on the installment plan. It's very hard to complete your federal parole without getting violated and going back to prison, having to start it over. It never terminates.
Yeah, so many problems with our justice system. It's, for one thing, it's tremendously outdated. Just in terms of the public's access to information, it's totally outdated. We're operating under a system that would have still appeared antiquated 110 years ago, but now today, in this age of the internet and, supposed transparency, it's fucking bullshit that some guy in a robe can decide whether or not you're going to be in a cage for the next 15 or 20 years, even if you haven't committed a violent crime against anybody else. And even if you have, because I just wonder, all these prison sentences seem so arbitrary to me. How is it that somebody who rapes or kills somebody can get out in 20 years, but somebody who commits some kind of weird financial crime will get 7 life sentences? It's like, how is that actually determined? It seems just like bullshit, It doesn't seem like I don't feel like there's an enlightened despot figuring out these sentences. I think it's just kind of being decided by bureaucracy. And I think the bureaucracy is some of the most faceless bureaucracy results in some of the most evil shit that goes down in modern civilization.
Right, absolutely. No, it really, really does. But to go back to your point where with the Quentin Tarantino and the new slavery thing, I'm not sure if you're very familiar with the crack laws or the crack rights. You know anything about that?
I don't know much about that. Can you summarize it?
Well, yeah, just really quick. Like, in the early 90s, they changed the crack laws and made crack cocaine one of the most penalized things to have, right? Well, who gets caught with crack cocaine? Inner city black kids who don't have a job and have, whatever. So they basically made crack mandatory minimums and charges for getting caught with crack ridiculous, like, ridiculous amounts of time and years and stuff like that. And that's one of the things, is those laws really only affected black people because black people are the fucking crack dealers. And so, kids getting caught with a little bit of drugs on the street are going to prison for a decade, Now, what does that do? You just fuck that dude's whole life. What's he going to do when he gets out? He's going to fucking sell crack, I mean, that's what's going to happen. But yeah, it is pretty arbitrary how the federal system works. I mean, they have mandatory minimums for everything, but there's no rhyme or reason to how they come to that conclusion. To cut you off for a second, sorry. No, go ahead.
We need a justice system to put people away who've done, bad things or who have harmed others or, defrauded others. We need that. But we also need to be making the best use out of people and allowing people to be their best possible selves. And our current system does not do that. It doesn't really seem to give a shit about rehabilitating people or improving people. It just wants to lock them away and make a profit on their time while they're in that cell. And to me, at least, I don't feel like we should live in a society where you have to be in fear of getting fucked over for having the wrong thing on you or falling afoul of some weird DMV type bureaucracy. I feel like it should be a more human process where you understand what's going on. And ideally, this is just an ideal. I think that ideally our justice system should be at a point where if you're a moral person who fucked up and you do something that harms somebody else, you almost are grateful for what you receive. You're grateful for the time or for the fine or whatever it is you end up getting. It shouldn't be like you're a person who's done nothing wrong and boom, your life is ruined and you don't understand why. That should not be what's happening, and I feel like that happens far too often in this country.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the word you used, harm, that's a very important word. A lot of things I think should be based off how much harm you do, whether it's physical harm or most, like you said, big bankers causing harm by taking everybody's houses and defrauding everybody. There's got to be a way to calculate how much harm you do, and that's what your sentence needs to be based off of. If you're selling weed, you're not hurting nobody. You're hurting whoever makes the laws, I guess. But who the fuck are you hurt? People don't smoke weed and then go break into someone's house and steal their Christmas presents to sell them to get more weed. It doesn't work like that, Who are you hurting by selling weed? You're not causing harm. So that's a very strange thing to see people in prison for 30 and 40 years for weed charges.
Well, there are still people out there. They tend to be older, who they rely mostly on mainstream media for their news and information,
Right.
and some of them genuinely believe that they still believe the reefer madness type stuff, that pot makes you go off and have unprotected sex and jump out of a window on the 5th floor. They think that marijuana is like crystal meth or something. They don't have any understanding of the differences, the huge differences between different kinds of drugs. And meanwhile, they don't mind cracking back a 6-pack every night or a bottle of wine. But if somebody, once every 6 months, if they smoke a joint to unwind, or if they're a cancer patient who needs, some medical marijuana to survive and get by without being in excruciating pain, they feel the need to be condescending toward that other person. And that strikes me as fucking nonsense.
Yeah, for sure, man. And like you said, a lot of people subscribe to that old train of thought, and a lot of it is, the government pushing that. Like, I'm sure you remember growing up the Say Nope to Dope and Hug to Drug and the DARE campaign and the public service announcements about not doing drugs and shit, your brain on crack. You remember that shit?
Yeah, I remember some of that stuff.
Cracking the egg in the frying pan, like, this is your brain on drugs and shit. They've been coming out with new ones of those, and they were pretty graphic commercials, man. Like, I know one's about, like, some kid getting run over on their bike. Like, like these potheads are going through a drive-through McDonald's or something, and they're high, and they end up running over some little girl on a bike and killing her. And then there's another one where some chick smokes weed and passes out at a party, and some dude rapes her, like at the end of that movie Kids. I'm like, dude, that does not happen on weed. I don't know what kind of weed these people are smoking, but I've never seen that happen.
Yeah, in fact, both of those experiences sound like something that would happen much more likely if you're drunk. I mean, in terms of, you look at drunk driving accidents in this country, the key word there is drunk. You don't hear of an epidemic of high driving accidents because they're not fucking out there. The statistics are that it's drunk driving, and also a lot of violence is motivated by alcohol. People get belligerent. They lose their the rational side gets turned off, and it's just
a lot of mood swings.
Yeah, exactly. They get moody, and it's all about you've been offended, and you have to protect your ego. I think alcohol is one of the most harmful drugs out there ever, and I like to drink every now and then, but you have to acknowledge that it's not like some fun, carefree thing. It has real consequences.
I'm drunk as fuck right now. That's why I keep slurring and messing up my words with S for some reason. But I fully, I drink and I smoke because I'm a fucking idiot. But I fully admit the fact that, I know alcohol is poison. You're poisoning your body. Your body's reacting to the poison. And it gives you this kind of euphoric effect, and you have mood swings and whatever. But it's one of the worst things you can ingest. I think we've covered it before, but alcohol is one of the only things that can kill you withdrawing from it. You know what I'm saying? Alcohol withdrawals, DTs, you can stroke out. It's very easy to die from alcohol detox.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's not really, common with other drugs.
I'm really grateful and fortunate that I've never really had any addiction problems in my life, but the people who, I think in a lot of ways it's the most heartbreaking to hear these people who started off as social drinkers and then became straight up alcoholics, where it's starting to hurt their livers, and they don't have a social life anymore. And that's something that actually does happen on I know of a couple people personally where that has happened. That actually happens, and I feel like what they've done is they've taken that very real story and they've applied it to weed, where it never happens. I don't know a single person who smoked a joint at a party and then, before you know it, they've quit their job, their girlfriend breaks up with them, and they're always just in search of that next joint. That doesn't fucking happen. It's not like that.
Yeah, when you don't have weed, you just kind of wish you had some weed. That's it. And then when you get the weed, you just wish you had some snacks. That's it.
We have to update drug policy in this country. It just doesn't make sense anymore. When you even have guys like Richard Branson putting on the Virgin corporate website, that the war on drugs is a failure and needs to end. It needs to end. The data's in that it doesn't work, and they've looked at Portugal, that decade-long decriminalization study. You want to treat addiction as a health problem, and address it as such. You don't treat it as something. You don't treat it as a crime. Who are you harming? If you decide to ingest something into your body, who does that harm other than you? And in the case of something like marijuana, it's probably not harming anybody. It might actually be beneficial if some of the anti-carcinogen claims are true, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's like you said. There's been numerous studies done, by Harvard and everybody else, and who knows how conclusive they are. But I mean, you hear it over and over again. Marijuana no deaths have ever been conclusively attributed to marijuana. No one's proved like marijuana's ever killed anybody, not one person. And meanwhile, you got hundreds of thousands of people dying from cigarettes every year. And,
isn't that amazing that this thing can put you in prison for years and not a single person has ever died from it? I mean, spoons kill people, peanut allergies kill people, but
drunk drivers kill people every day.
Right.
Every fucking night. I'm one of those things where, like you said, harm. That's one of those things. Okay, you get busted for drunk driving once, dude. Okay, you get whatever, you get one pass. The second time, they should pull your license for a year. Third time, they should pull your license for life. You know what? No more drunk drivers. That's done. That's how you enforce that law, because that's something that kills people. A lot of people cannot drink and drive. Now, if you watch Mythbusters, there was a study where they did a text and drive versus like a drunk driving, and they proved that it was harder to text and drive than after. I can't remember how many beers they drank, like 8, and then drove like a obstacle course, and they did better drunk than texting. So don't fucking text and drive, you assholes. That does kill people too. Well, I laugh when I hear about people texting and driving and dying.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you're looking at a screen and you're not looking at the road.
Yeah. You have to concentrate. You have to separate your focus to type buttons and shit. You can't do that. It's not like adjusting your radio station. You've got to concentrate when you're texting. I mean, there's a bunch of people who could do it by touch. I can't because I got.
Well, you have to treat cars with respect because, I mean, not only are you totally fucking yourself over if you're distracting yourself by texting on an iPhone or something, your body and your nervous system, even without any distractions at all, they're not designed to be in a car moving 70 miles an hour because, in our biological past, there was no instance where that occurred. We were designed to move at a max speed of, I don't know, maybe like 12 or 15 miles an hour, not 70 miles an hour on a 4-lane highway. So you're already pushing your luck in the sense that you're using your nervous system and your response times to the max, and then you're going to throw in some huge distraction on the side. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize, you kind of zone out and people say like, oh, I drive on autopilot, I don't pay attention. You really are, though. You're pretty much driving with a lot of peripheral vision. You're using your movement sensors. You're not using your focal vision, But you can't separate that because when you're using your spidey senses to drive, they don't work when you're texting. You can't use all your senses, Even in that mode, like nobody focuses, unless you're neurotic, you don't focus on every move like a nervous cat. But you kind of like listen to radio and cruise, especially if you got a long, commute to work every day. But all your senses take over. Your hearing, like you said, your peripherals.
Yeah, I mean, when you've been driving for a while, the car really becomes an extension of you, where it's kind of your body moving at 70 miles an hour, and even before you consciously realize you need to stop, you'll stop.
Absolutely, yeah, and see, that's the thing. Like people say that we have five senses, right? But there's a lot of senses. Like I've always been fascinated by distance, by how we measure distance and stopping, and like how our brain knows to catch stuff. Like when someone throws you a tennis ball, like to catch it. There's more than just seeing it. There's a bunch of other stuff that comes into play. And just like how there've been studies done where like they know definitively now that when someone's staring at you, you could pick up on it. You know it. You know when someone's looking at you. It's it's an old hunter and prey type of thing. But, I mean, all that stuff comes into play. And when you're distracted, that's never a safe thing. So, yeah, don't drink and drive and don't text and drive. But, see, the other thing is about marijuana is that makes a lot of people kind of more perceptive. And it kind of puts you in that zone a little more. So you might be more prone to avoiding accidents if you're high. I don't know. I'm not saying get fucking barbecued and go driving down the 405. But it's like with jiu-jitsu and everything else, marijuana like lets you kind of roll with stuff a little bit. And I've never been like so high that I'm like, man, I shouldn't be driving right now. I don't advocate doing any drug and driving, but I don't think marijuana is one of the ones that hinders you the same way that alcohol does.
Well, I definitely do not advocate. If you're going to be behind the wheel of a car, you should be 100% sober,
Right.
not under the influence of anything. But to go back to what I was saying before, drug policy in this country needs to change. It doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't make human sense. It doesn't make medical sense. Like at a certain point,
But it makes financial
it
sense.
makes financial sense. But they're literally lying to people. They're saying that marijuana is dangerous, and we now know that it's not really dangerous. If you're using it responsibly, in fact, it can be beneficial. So when they're lying to you, and everybody knows that they're lying, at what point do we call that bluff?
Right.
And
how,
just
how
say,
can it be dangerous and at the same time be considered a performance-enhancing drug, right?
Right.
It's like you can't have it both ways. You can't take people's gold medals away in sports for using marijuana or suspend them from using marijuana.
Or you have
Unless it's
Carl
good.
Sagan, who said that that marijuana was instrumental in him having some of his theories about the way the universe works
Right.
and black holes and shit like that. And he's certainly not the only scientist or public intellectual who's been helped by that particular drug. If that did not exist, I think there would be less innovation than there is today, to be sure. And we need modern policy. We don't. Also, the whole financial thing. You're protecting the financial interests of a couple of pharmaceutical companies who are selling people pills that rot your liver and kill you if you overdose on them. But the greater economic picture is that it seems like where marijuana is legalized and regulated, it creates an economic boom. And certainly they've seen this in some towns and cities in Colorado. It creates a whole industry because you need people to be at the dispensaries as cashiers, and those are kind of entry level jobs. You need marketing managers, and those are more like lower level professional jobs, recent college grads type of stuff. You need people to move this stuff around. So now you're talking about logistics. You need the growers and all the people who manufacture the hydroponic stuff. It creates a whole industrial boom. And the same way that
It creates its whole own economy.
yeah, exactly, its own ecosystem.
Right.
You need graphic designers to develop the marketing stuff. It's huge.
Advertising,
it's like, yeah, it's like when GM builds a car. It's not just keeping people at GM employed. It's keeping the people employed at the parts manufacturers. That a lot of this stuff
Quick
is
lube and
subcontract.
everything else.
Yeah, so I just wish the politicians weren't so full of shit about this. And although it's not really like a big part of my platform, when people ask me about it, I'm not hesitant to tell them where I stand. Because I think if you're somebody who believes that a person should go to prison for 15 years for smoking something in the comfort of their own home, I think that's bullshit. And I think it's fucking evil on top of that.
Yeah, that's that's something that we're going to have a changing of the guard sooner or later. Sooner or later, it's going to have to be someone's going to run on that platform. Maybe with the next 4 years. I mean, if someone ran flat out like all I'm going to do as president is legalize the weed, he might win, man. He might fucking win. Like that's all I'm going to do. I'm legalizing the weed. Fuck everything else.
Well, if he said I'm legalizing weed and I'm gonna keep the NDAA from imprisoning
I'm
Americans.
not talking about your perfect world, man. I'm talking about someone trying to get into office. I'm just saying if Schwarzenegger can get into office, I mean, I could just imagine someone running on the weed platform. Every stripper would be supporting him. They'd be vote for this guy tattoos on every butt cheek in the world. It'd be a beautiful thing. I'm not saying that would be the best president. I'm just saying sooner or later that has to happen. They gotta legalize this shit sooner or later. I mean, there's so many benefits to it, man.
Well, this country is. They keep talking about the fiscal cliff and all this bullshit. This country is on the edge, not of a cliff, but of an absolutely tremendous tech and economic boom. The data on that is in. Like by 2020, there's going to be a huge boom in demand for specialized labor. And just for a number of reasons, like some of the crazy deleveraging stuff that we encountered after the 2006, the bubble burst, a lot of that stuff has already been absorbed, and now we're starting to see real estate prices rebound, and people are starting to get back to work. This economy, or this country, is going to have a huge fucking boom, and I just hope that in the process of that happening, we can finally get rid of some of this old, archaic shit, like the belief that smoking a joint is like reefer madness. We need to We need to bury that stuff because it doesn't work for us anymore. It doesn't work as a society. It's holding us back.
Right. I mean, just everything. Like you said, there's so many industries involved. Have you ever seen those old pictures of Henry Ford hitting the car with the sledgehammer?
No, I haven't seen that.
Henry Ford made a car out of it was hemp fiberglass. It was like hybrid fiberglass made out of hemp fibers. It was like the strongest material in the world. You could hit it with a sledgehammer, it won't dent. Henry Ford invented. I don't know if he invented it, but he made a car out of this shit. And we don't have cars made out of that shit right now. I mean, it's crazy. There's like so many things that hemp is like so strong. It's durable. It's self-perpetuating. It'll grow almost anywhere in the world. Makes some of the strongest fibers in the world. Every boat in the Navy, every anchor chain, every rope, everything was made out of hemp fiber. You know, like the old Hemp for Victory from 1942. The government used to try to get people to grow hemp until, you know, all the business got involved in it. It's very strange, and it's one of the most magical substances in the world. One of the things that Onnit's selling right now is hemp force protein powder. And it's supposed to be one of the best protein. It's made from hemp hearts. And it's supposed to be one of the best protein powders you can get in the world, you know. And they have to grow the hemp in Canada because they can't grow the hemp in the United States to make this protein powder. It's
really
pretty strange.
Really. Speaking of Onnit, I don't have any financial relationship with them, so I'm just saying this because it's my own, you know, experience. So far, Alpha Brain has been pretty good to me. When I had to go to yoga this evening, I was feeling a little bit run down from just a long day of doing a lot of stuff related to the campaign, and I didn't want to cancel on yoga since I'd already, you know, paid for it. And I popped another one of those, and I felt a little bit more energetic and focused, and was able to get through it. And so far, my experience is it definitely does something positive.
Yeah, man. You know, even like I said, even if it's just a placebo, who cares? If it's an effect on you, I'm all for it.
Well, I don't think it's a placebo.
And they do sponsor me, so
I don't think it's a placebo because on days when I don't take it, before I've had my coffee and, you know, shower and the whole like waking up routine, I just feel really disoriented and kind of out of it. And on days where I am taking Alpha Brain, I don't really get that. In the morning, I wake up feeling fairly refreshed. I still need like a couple minutes to get oriented, and then that's it. I'm ready to roll, you know?
Right.
There's no extended
it's
process.
Like all your synapses are already firing.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely creates more like more fluidity, where I feel like ideas come a little bit easier than they would otherwise. And it also seems to be, for whatever reason, wiping out some of that hesitation, a little bit of that internal filter that would keep you from saying some things. Now right. I just say them, and it's not like I'm drunk or something, you know, like I'm not it's not like I don't have any internal filter. It's just that it's being lessened for some reason.
Right. I try, like, see, you're in a position where you have to use an internal filter, and you kind of have to use your inner dialogue before you just blurt shit out because, you know, like I said, in your position, you want to be a politician and everything else, and by all means you should. I want to get back to, like I said, you said you were feeling a little rough on the campaign thing, and then you got turned around after the Matt Staggs thing. We talked about that off the air, I believe. Did we ever get to that on the show?
Yes. Okay, yeah, we should talk about this on the air a little bit right now.
Yeah, let's get to that, man.
So, yeah, Matt Staggs came on the show, and I was just kind of ranting to him about how the people in my district don't really understand a lot of the stuff that's going on. They still think that the incumbent is, you know, a good American and she's doing a good job, despite her supporting insane nonsense like SOPA, you know, the censorship bill, and all this stuff that, if it had passed, would utterly destroyed America. You can't have internet censorship in America, and you can't have imprisonment without trial through NDAA. These are absolutely crazy ideas. And but most people, they don't know about it because they only rely on television media. And that most TV channels, with the exception of maybe, you know, Abby Martin's show, they're not talking about this stuff, so people just don't know. And I was really down because I feel like there was such a disconnect between how smart people are online and, you know, how great my audience is versus people in this district who just don't know what's going on and only rely on Fox and MSNBC. And Matt Staggs was very positive and gave me a lot of, you know, positive reinforcement. And then after that, things were still looking kind of bad for a little bit because what it came down to is we looked at the numbers, and it seemed statistically impossible that I would be able to beat the chair of the the DNC, Democratic Party chair, just because it can't out fundraise her. She can raise millions with relative ease.
Man, that just irritates me so much that no matter what, everything comes down to fucking money.
Well, here's where things get good though.
Yeah, you go for it.
After that happened, and after that kind of sobering realization, for whatever reason, we turned a corner, and it sounds like I'm drunk here now. But we turned a corner, and we started to get just the right expertise and financial resources coming in, new people signing up to help out with serious financial and political connections, and it just happened. And I wish I knew at exactly what moment that happened, because I could create a best-selling self-help book out of it, if I knew exactly how that was triggered. But I don't think it really had to do with me. I think it just happened, and I can't claim responsibility for it, really. Because it wasn't even the Matt Staggs podcast that I don't think that triggered people to action. I think the people who came on board afterwards just came on board. It just happened. And now we have a better strategy in place, and we're also looking at running in a different district down here against somebody who, statistically, I can almost beat her now. So
yeah, sometimes you got to do that to get your foot in the door and affect change.
Yeah, because either way, you're
seen that Will Ferrell movie, The Campaign.
Right. Either way, you're still a congressman. It's not like once you're in, you are a congressman.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you are a congressman, and you have all the voting power of a congressperson. And it doesn't matter if you came from the hardest congressional district ever or one of the easiest congressional districts. If you win the election, you won the election, and you're in there, and you can have a real impact on national policy and try to fix some of this fucked up stuff. And so it looks like we're going to be re-registering in this other district. And if we can just continue to raise the amount of money we've been raising, which, a lot of people have been contributing small amounts, and that's what we want. We want everybody out there who knows who I am to contribute $100 or less within the next month. And
I saw that's what you posted on your Twitter too.
Yeah, because we don't want people to
at least $100.
we don't want to break the bank, and also I want to stay true to what I had said early on in the campaign, which is that we are not going to accept super PAC support or special interest money. I don't want some fucking lobbying group to write me a check for $1 million. What I want is for me to be beholden to thousands of American citizens and for the people to put somebody into office, not special interests. So we're holding to that. And if, for example, we know how many people listen to this podcast. If 80% of the people out there were to contribute $100 or less, I would absolutely, barring, an act of God or me getting caught in some like crazy Julian Assange sex scandal kind of thing, I would be a congressperson in 2014, which is fucking crazy to think about. It's crazy to me that we went from running a race where people are saying it's statistically impossible for you to win to when we move into this new district and get things organized properly, it's mine to lose, basically. Isn't that crazy?
Right, yeah, for sure. And then at least you know that what you're. I'm not even going to finish this thought because I don't want to wish anything negative. We're going full on David Seaman 2014 here, baby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I still have to work my ass off, and it's still not guaranteed that I'll win by any means because the woman I'd be running against, she won by a 10% margin in the last race, but that can be defeated. 10% margin is nothing when you're talking about the level of internet support that this campaign already has, and our fundraising capability and some of the new people we've brought on board. It's really nothing. But running against the chair of the Democratic Party, that really is a David versus Goliath battle. And I was getting depressed because I didn't want to be in a position where I have to run a real campaign for the next year and a half, and people are volunteering their time and their money, and yet I know that we're probably not going to win. That sucks. And it must suck for somebody like Governor Gary Johnson, who ran for president in the last election, and he had to run a real campaign, even knowing that there's a 0% chance he would become president.
It's so horrible.
It's got to be awful because he still has to give all the speeches and interviews. He still needs a campaign bus. He can't just jerk off and be in an ice cream truck. He still needs to do all of the real stuff that a candidate does. But at the end of the day that Governor Gary Johnson is not going to be president, and that must fucking suck.
Yeah, that's just one of those things where you're looking at him and you're just like, wow. Almost at the point like, wow, why are you even wasting the money? It's, you can't think like that, but you almost have to. That's why when you say, like, I wouldn't take the super PAC money, dude, I'll take it. And then I'll be like, hey, man, thank you guys for giving me this $500,000. I'm not doing nothing for you. Like, I do it on the podcast. I'd be like, yeah, I appreciate it, but, whatever. I'm not.
Yeah, I think that's the fantasy, is to be able to do that. But I think just by taking somebody's money, you have become beholden to them. And we got to wrap this up, unfortunately. But yeah, things are looking good now, and I'm excited because I told people from day one I do not want this to be an education campaign. If I can get on TV and radio shows to talk about important issues, that's awesome. But that's not the point of this. The point of this is to actually get in there and be able to vote on important legislation and start to roll back some of our crazy post 9/11 police state, restore people's rights, modernize drug policy, and just not be a fucking asshole to other people, and not be beholden to special interests. And so that's why I really wanted a race where it looks like we can win statistically. And that's why when this new strategy came along of this different district and some of the other developments that I can't really say much in terms of details, but now that the numbers have changed, it's really exciting again. And it's like, okay, cool, I'm not going to be wasting the next year and a half. I'm actually fighting for something that we can win.
Nothing wrong with that, man. Anyways, I know you got to get ready for your next podcast, so let's go ahead and wrap this up, brother.
Yeah, tell people where they can contact you and listen to you.
You guys can just get at me at the Cuckoo's Nest on Twitter, DACUCKOOSNEST, and I have a podcast on iTunes. You can check it out under the same name. That's about it.
All right, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
All right, brother, have a good one. I appreciate you having me on again. Take it easy.
You too. Enjoy your Mayan end of the world.
Later.
All right, bye. All right, guys, this has been another David Seaman Hour. I actually got to jump off in a second because the Adam Kokesh interview starts in a few minutes. But if you do want to contribute to the campaign tonight, just head over to davidseamanforcongress.com and hit the donate button. It accepts credit cards, bank accounts, all that shit. And like I said, $100 or less. If 80% of you were to give money in the next couple days or in the next month, we've got this thing. It's exciting to go from the situation we were in to the situation we're in now. And even if we continue to just raise modest amounts of money, we have a very good chance of doing well. So thank you so much for listening, and thanks for spreading the word about the show. I appreciate the 211 positive reviews on iTunes so far. Average 5-star rating, which is fucking awesome. I don't even consider this a 5-star show. I think the sound quality is bad. I think I ramble too much. But I really appreciate everybody ranking the show so highly because it keeps it up there in the iTunes charts. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm not just saying that. I know a lot of you guys on Twitter. And I appreciate those of you who tweeted me earlier tonight, actually, to tell me that you've contributed money to the campaign already. I'm going to try to find one tweet here and just give it some attention. Actually, 2 tweets. Jason for Liberty says, time to rise up and vote in real and honest politicians. D. Seaman is here. D. Seaman here is one that is running in 2014. Support him, take action. That's not the one I was looking for, but that's still positive. Here we go. Johnny Utah. David, I just made my first campaign donation, and I'm proud to have done it. You can win, David. I have faith in you. And, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. Have a good evening. And assuming the world does not end in the next couple of hours, look out for some really exciting interviews in the weeks ahead.